Patrick, you've got some memories of some of these great boats.
Well, as we celebrate 60 years today, some have asked, what were the greatest boats of all time, or the greatest drivers? So we decided to take it by decade. Going back to the beginning, we must salute that great innovation with sponsons that started it all. Designed by Ted Jones of Seattle, the slow motions. They set the world speed record. They went to Detroit and won the right to run the next race in Seattle. And that's how it all began. Seattle's second most famous boat, well, the Miss Thriftways. Greatest drivers of that era, well, we salute Bill Muncy and a guy who's here today, Myra Slovak in the Wahoo. He's the guy that flew an airliner full of passengers out from under the Iron Curtain to freedom and later drove the Miss Wahoo and then the Tahoe Miss to national championships. And then the 60s arrived and those Ballard Bullets, the Bardolls, Miss Bardol, and second place that year to the Hawaii Kai. Great drivers of that decade, the late Ronnie Musset in the Bardolls and Jack Regis in the Hawaii Kais. The 1970s arrive. Big changes in the sport. The decade of the turbine engine and pickle fork noses on the hydroplanes. Bill Muncy reestablishes himself as the #1 driver of the decade while driving his blue and white Atlas van lines. Second place, well, that's an easy call. The boat was Dave Herensberger's Pride of Pan Packs, and the driver of the decade, second place goes to Eatonville's George Henley. What a show they used to put on. And then came the 1980s. A young man is on the horizon. His skills seemed to surpass any he had seen in years. Bill Muncy noted those skills, and after Bill's accidental death in a race at Acapulco, Fran Muncy knew well who should drive Bill's equipment. Fran's boat, the Atlas Van Lines, and later the Miller Americans, were the best of the 80s, as was their driver, a young man by the name of Chip Hanauer. We give him our thumbs up, as with his 60 career victories, he was the greatest driver of the 80s. Second place? Well, that goes to Bernie Little's Budweiser's, and one of his great drivers of all time, the late Dean Chenoweth. The 1990s arrive. Everything is now turbine-powered. Chip remains the king of drivers, followed by a new name on the scene, Port Orchard and Auburn's Dave Villwock, who becomes national driving champion in Fred Leland's Pico American Dream. Best boats of the 90s, Bernie Little's Budweiser's and Steve Woomer's Winston Eagles. There it flies down the course on Lake Washington. And then a new century. And so far, in its first decade, the greatest boats are the Elstrom's Elams, as again boats from Ballard reign supreme. Second place? Well, now there's Dave Villwock. Yes, he's the best driver of this decade. And second place, we select the Miss Madison Oh Boy Oberto. The decade of Villwock and Elam and Steve David and the Oh Boy Oberto. And so there you have it. Now, you may disagree with me, but as Tommy Lasorda once said when they threw him out of a Dodger game for arguing balls and strikes, I calls them as I sees them. Thank you.
Pat O'Day, he has sees them all. Pat, we appreciate it.